Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Shot. And today we're going to talk about one of our most favorite subjects, incompetent journalists, especially in this particular scenario. Adrian Basson, who is the editor of News 24, who call themselves the largest news platform in South Africa, but we have our doubts about that because we know that we are the largest news platform in South Africa. But nevertheless, Adrian Basson, I think he wakes up on a Sunday morning and he thinks to himself, oh shit, I have a column to do for tomorrow and I haven't done it yet because I was pissed last night with my other friends in Cape Town. So I'm just going to write the first thing that comes to mind. And a lot of his columns are released on, excuse me, on Mondays.
Monday mornings.
And you can tell that they were written in a rush or maybe with a bit of a hangover because in this particular column that was released Monday morning or today or whenever we release this is utter shit. So we're going to talk about that. Warren, you have to tell us, what is this column about and why do you find it so annoying?
Yeah, okay. So I've done all of the analysis on this one, so I'll take the lead. Um, right. Let's just remind ourselves of Adrian Basson's greatest hits. His greatest hits was Ramaphosa was spectacular tonight. Now we all need to do our part. Remember that guy? That's our guy.
Yeah,
That's our
Cyril was
guy. Okay.
majestic, was the thing. This was when he imposed the lockdowns that destroyed the country. But anyway,
Correct. So Mr. Majestic himself. For those of you who don't know, there was a tavern shooting in Soweto on the weekend, and some guy went there. This is what we know. Some guy went there, he got a bit drunk. We think he pulled out an AK-47. Him and some other guys, they mowed down up to 20 people in the tavern and they left. That's as murky as the story was. So everybody's been trying to kind of piece it together and go, well, what actually happened? What guns were involved? So let's start off with what we think has happened. And the stories range from it's a gang, it's a rival gang who has come in there to extort protection money. And the rival gang has kind of wanted to send a message to somebody who's basically said no. So they've gone into this tavern and they've mowed them down with illegal firearms. Obviously, the firearms in question seem to be a 9mm and AK-47. So it seems to have been a hit. The other argument is that somebody says that they think he was drinking there. He got lonely and came back in and killed some people. But that kind of suggestion seems to now be discredited. So it does seem
mm,
like it was potentially a hit, and it was another gang who had come in on gang territories. So that's what we know. We know that it was in a tavern very late at night. It seems like it was a hit. It was a hit from a rival gang. And the consequences of that is obviously a large number of patrons who are dead. Now, we don't know who those patrons are or what their connection were to the shooter. But what we do know is the aftermath. So in typical fashion, in the normal way that the ANC does this crap, they want to do it as a form of political point scoring. So Ramaphosa's made comment on it. Becky Cele's been there to it. And on Sunday, Gun Free South Africa, you'll remember them, the propaganda arm for the New World Order. They came out and they basically said they want to see more gun control in South Africa. And Ian Cameron last week, when he challenged Becky Cele and said we need more hands in private ownership, not less, Gun Free South Africa came out and said, Mr. Cameron, you're wrong. We need less guns, not more.
mm,
Now, what makes this interesting is that the president did respond to this, and he has issued an article. You know, the president's fond of his "Dear South Africans, here's some bullshit no one reads," and then sound off your president that no one likes. So he wrote an article basically saying that we need to combat the causes of this, which he described as illicit firearms. Now, we all know that
yeah.
illicit firearms basically means illegal or stolen firearms. And I think we all agree with that, apart from clown face Mr. Basson. So clown face Mr. Basson, the world's biggest dunce, has written an article, as Ramon says, it seems like he wrote it in a drunken stupor, where he basically says, look at Japan. Japan has no gun violence, apart from obviously their prime minister who was killed last week in an illegal firearm.
Yeah.
But don't worry about that one.
But other than
Just
that, a homemade gun, by the
other than
way.
that. Yep, a homemade gun with 2 shotgun shells that shouldn't have been circulated, but amazingly were. Oh, by the way, that guy that was killed in Japan also is one of the guys who stood with Trump against the WEF and the New World Order. Coincidence? Maybe, but that's not for us to speculate. Anyway, so he says, look at Japan. It's a model of gun control. There's no guns circulating in Japan. Therefore, there's no gun violence. The fact that the Japanese have a different culture, different code of ethics, like that doesn't cross Mr. Basson's head because he's
Yeah,
clearly that high.
yeah.
And he goes on.
Goes good.
Sorry, Ramon.
No, no, no. Like trying to think that Japan and South Africa are somehow you can compare them in terms of history, culture, geographics, dynamics, demographics, IQ. Like if you think you can just compare and contrast based on, oh, one has gun laws and one doesn't, so therefore we need more gun laws. I mean, you have to be. Okay, I can't use that word, the R word, but you have to be like a moron of such ineptitude. Like you shouldn't be able to eat by yourself to suggest that.
Yeah,
But
but
unfortunately, he does. So,
that is Mr. Basson. That is
mm,
Mr. Basson, the world's biggest idiot. So as we all see further in Mr. Basson's article, he says that the people were mowed down with heavy artillery, including AK-47 rifles. 15 people were shot dead. Now he goes on very rightly to say, it's not a problem about booze because one minister, one ANC minister says this is actually a booze issue. It's not a gun violence or gang violence issue. And these taverns, they need to be better controlled, according to this ANC minister. So
sure.
his argument of how we fix this is let's have more laws to regulate taverns, even though that doesn't stop illegal taverns, which is really where the problem is. But the minute we create a law, it immediately gets enforced by God. So clearly, that must be how it works. So he says that was his argument, and Mr. Basson basically rubbishes that and says, "No, that's not a good argument." Now, there was another ANC bigwit who actually said very rightly, and I know the Daily Friend would disagree with me, but I would agree with what this ANC minister says. I know, shocking news. We agree with the ANC, but he basically says it's not the police's duty to police and stop shootings. That's not their job. And he says there actually should be the tavern owners' control. And I personally would agree with that. I'm a big fan of people taking control over their own protection. I don't want to
Yeah,
be protected by the police. You don't have to agree with me. That's your view.
fair
And
enough.
the
But I mean,
Daily Friend
the
would be
police
in
is
your
there to
point.
keep peace and order. So it is their job to prevent
I,
shooting their
I would
taverns,
I would I would agree. I would agree. But what
hypothetically.
he means by that is that they don't have to do active policing in that area.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Quick side note: have you noticed that the ANC is becoming very libertarian lately? It's like if you don't have electricity from ESCOM, just make your own. And now the police aren't there to
They
protect you;
can't do
just
it.
get your own security. Like very libertarian guys now. The ANC all of a sudden, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very
So just
interesting.
to clarify that before I obviously get some more hate in the comments, what I'm saying is that the police shouldn't be standing at the front door doing active policing. Like that's not their job, and I agree with that because it's a small step from having a guy at your front door going, "Oh, I'm just making sure there's no AK-47s," to "I'm just making sure you don't leave your house because you didn't get your vaccine." So I'm not in favor of that. So I agree with this minister. This minister says it should be the tavern owners who check things that go on in and out of their location. They should have a guard at the door and they should protect their patrons. I agree entirely. That is the job of the patrons. However, so what Mr. Basson goes on to say is that obviously it can't be drunks because it can't be drunks. And it can't be, the drunks or the tavern owner's responsibility to do this. The only option is to say, okay, well, where's the supply of guns from? Now, Mr. Basson very rightly says that actually it was the pre 1994 history of guns that was circulated, in other words, the struggle guns, that are now coming back to haunt the public because we don't know where they are. We don't know what they're being used for. And in an article done and a research done, it showed that a lot of the guns that were used in South African crimes were from that era. So he goes on then to say, SAP's are obviously the biggest supplier of illegal illegal guns in the country, and it's their
Yep.
fault that we've got all these guns. No one wants to hand in guns to the police because no one trusts them. But he then goes on to say, and this is what I need to quote, I'm nearly at the end, Ramon. The gun lobby's argument that you have a right to own a gun for self-defense cannot outweigh the endemic crisis we have with firearm violence. Very often, legal firearms of victims are used against them and others by criminals. Desperate times call for desperate measures. This is a crisis, Mr. President. And he says that the only way to seriously address our gun violence is to introduce harsh gun control measures, including an amnesty. right? And so you have to ask yourself, you have to say, okay, well, we've had 50 million amnesties and they
Yeah,
did nothing. And in fact, actually, in all the amnesties, when guns were given to the police, they were resold to criminals. And what
exactly.
he's basically saying is that the police will take your gun from an amnesty and give it to a criminal, but the legal owner should be without his gun, even though the country's crime ridden and the police can't do their job because no one trusts them. But you should have your gun taken away from you because gun lobbies?
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. So think about it
I
this
rest my
way.
case.
Think about this argument. This is Adrian Basson's argument, and I'm going to steel man the argument. Number one, guns are a real problem in South Africa. Yeah, I agree. Illicit guns are a real problem. I fully agree with that. Number two, the only way to deal with illicit guns. No, wait. Number two, illicit guns are mostly provided for by the police and the army and the secret and the intelligence services. That we know through Zondo. We know through books such as Give Back Our Guns. Adrian Prinsloo, I think his name,
Get
or
us more
Colonel
guns.
Prinsloo,
Give
he
us more
sold
guns.
tens of thousands of
That's the
guns
book. Yeah.
on the Cape Flats. Okay, so illicit guns are a problem. Illicit guns are provided for by the police. The solution, therefore, is to create a law where if you want a gun as a citizen, you need to apply, and you can only be a hunter, a dedicated shooter, or a police officer to have that gun. So if you have a gun for any other purpose, you must hand in your gun to the very saps, the very police officers that sell your guns to gangs
To the
on the
criminals.
Cape Flats and everywhere else. That's why I'm saying he was definitely hungover when he wrote this rather, because it is a non-argument. You're arguing for the people who supply the illegal guns to be in charge of all
Of
guns
guns.
in the country. Like, are you fucking mental? I mean, yes, he is, but still, it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, but as we said, this is the same guy who said, wasn't Cyril majestic because he locked
Yeah,
us all out and made us stay home and ruined the economy and caused untold job losses and put many people in poverty? Wasn't he majestic? Like,
yeah,
okay, like,
yes, he was. And my favorite part of this whole thing is basically he said there's just no time to figure out why people commit crime. Right, so he speaks about
mm,
these shooters over the weekend, and you know, there's just no time to understand why people are creating crimes or causing crimes or their psychological profile. What we need to do is have a blanket ban, a lockdown of guns, if you will. Now, name me one police officer of any stature whatsoever who doesn't want to understand why people commit crimes.
yeah.
Name me one.
And ANC people. There you go.
No, I've said policemen of stature, right? Look at any series on
Oh,
TV. I'm not saying
I've seen them, and you've seen them too. Those men are of stature, mate. Stature,
no, huge,
stature.
portly stature. But crime and solving crimes is all about trying to understand why people do things, not what they do, why they do it. That's how you solve
Uh,
crimes. But for this moron, it's like, oh no, just take away their tools, and then we'll solve
and
crime
everything will be
altogether.
fine.
Like what a, I
That's
can't.
but that's the same argument as don't worry if we introduce more licensing rules to the tavern owners, like there'll be no illegal taverns. Like, are you people on crack? Because that's not the
Yes,
way things work. That's like saying we lowered the speeding rate, now no one speeds because the speed limit says 100, not 120 now. So now everybody drives at 100. I don't know about you, mate, but
yeah.
that speeding limit's like, for me, is the minimum number, not the maximum. Like,
For me,
you
it's
know, like,
for me, it's like a suggestion, really. Would you prefer 120 or would you prefer 150? I'm like, nah, anything between them.
150 is fine.
150 is fine, thank you very much. And if I do get caught, I just like buy lunch or something. Anyway, no, we can't do that. Apologies for that. I do work at home. But anyway, I've got nothing more to add other than this is a moronic article written by a moronic editor in chief, and you should disregard everything he says. Well, I mean, if you haven't already, you certainly should. Imagine, if you will, someone who thinks Adrian Basson is like worth listening to and having that mindset. It must be a very difficult day in your life when Adrian Basson
Yeah.
is trustworthy.
Look, the thing that annoys me, and it's the thing that really needs to start annoying South Africans, is how you get all these useful idiots. They all come from funded by foreign NGOs, New World Order types, and they all want to come through and go, well, in England and in Japan and in Australia, and you have to sit there going like, We have no electricity. Like these guys don't have electric problems. We have like one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. Like we got nearly 40, 50% unemployment. The UK is like on five, and it's a national disaster. And you're like, guys, you compare, it's not comparable.
Yeah.
We have some crime zones here that are equivalent to war zones. And you're like, yeah, but in Japan, you're like, fuck off. And it's time that South Africans start to call them out on their bullshit, man. Like,
It
when
is.
you start reading these things, just call bullshit bullshit. I know people on the chats were like, don't swear. But seriously, sometimes you just have to call bullshit bullshit.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And funny enough, Adrian Basson would never have written this story during the course of the July unrest. He probably wrote a piece that was very happy that people were protecting their communities with their own guns. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this and not listening to Adrian Basson, because life would be very miserable if you actually did. Till the next one, bye bye.
Agree. Cheers. Bye.